Hi everyone, my name is Ophtho. I'm a fourth year medical student at Howard University, and I recently matched into ophthalmology, and I'm so excited to be going to Mount Sinai. If you haven't checked out my match day video already, I highly suggest you check that out. I am so thankful to have matched. As you can see, I got a Mount Sinai shirt. Shout out to my dad who got it for me. And matching into residency is a very tough feat, so I wanted to share my wisdom and share my knowledge and the gems I've picked up along the way by doing a Q&A. So I will be answering questions that were asked both on my Instagram story as well as YouTube comments. So I'm just gonna hop right into it. I haven't even reviewed these questions before filming, so my answers are going to be very unfiltered, very raw, and very honest. First question is, can failure in med school exams affect chances of match, and how to compensate for it? The answer to that question is probably yes, especially when it comes to the USMLE exams. As far as failing like your regular medical school exams that are in-house, I think what really matters is being able to show an upward trend and being able to recover, because in medical school, just because you fail one class doesn't necessarily mean you fail the whole unit. And even if you fail the whole unit, there are different ways to remediate for it. And I've never been on it in an admissions committee for residency, but from what I've heard, the way different medical schools do things is so variable and subjective. So I think the more important tests to consider are the USMLEs, which are standardized. So that's step one and step two. As far as failure of the USMLEs, I'm not gonna lie to you, from what I've heard, it does potentially have an impact on your ability to match, but there are people who have failed one or both of the exams the first try who are able to match successfully, and people who are not able to match successfully on their first try. My advice to somebody who's in a situation where they failed one of the step exams and they're now trying to match is to first and foremost try and show some sort of growth. For example, if you were to have failed step one the first try, you could potentially compensate for it by doing really well on step two and showing, okay, I've taken the time and really gotten the knowledge I need to have, and I've put in that effort. And that's also a way to show resilience in a sense. And same thing, if you fail step two the same time, try to not only pass the second go around, but try to do well. And you can also compensate through other aspects of your application. So many things go into your residency application, how attractive you are to different programs. This includes research, clerkship grades, how you did on your shelf exams, volunteer work, leadership, how you do on your interview. I also have an interview tips video. You can also check that out. Yeah, so many different things play a role. So just because you're weak in one thing doesn't mean that other things can't compensate. For example, my application was pretty strong overall, but I would say compared to my other aspects, my research was definitely a weakness. I have research, but I may not have as much compared to other applicants, especially within my field of ophthalmology. But I had a solid step 2 score. I honored all my clerkships. My grades were solid. I had a lot of volunteer work. Like, some of my leadership was even to run volunteer things. My personal statement was pretty interesting from what I've heard, as well as honor societies. I was both AOA as well as Gold Humanism. So I do think there are still programs out there that try to look at the big picture. Yes, there are still some that use scores to weed people out, but for the programs that consider so many other factors, just try and improve in those other factors. I hope that answered your question. Next question is, any advice to connect with residency programs who are outside of your state? First thing that comes to mind would be conferences. Try and figure out what the major societies in the specialty you're applying to are. In that same vein, if you're doing research, try and have research to present at these conferences. For example, ophthalmology has the AAO, that's the American Academy of Ophthalmology. They have ARVO, the Association of Research in Vision and Ophthalmology, I think is what ARVO stands for. Yeah, Association for Research in Vision and Ophthalmology. If you're Black, the NMA, SNMA, those are also things as well, National Medical Association. And there are so many other conferences, but one amazing thing about these national conferences is that everyone's coming to them, and you get to actually meet program directors and meet different people at different institutions firsthand. You get to network, you get to exchange contact information, and make sure to actually follow up and reach out later on. So that's kind of one way to get your foot in the door and get your name out there. Another thing I would say is away rotations. I also have an away rotations video. Doing an away rotation is like the best way to connect also. Let's say I'm in Maryland, right? Let's say I wanted to go to a program in New York. Actually, New York's not a good example because it's close. So let's actually say I wanted to go to a program in California, right? If I were to do an away rotation in California, it also kind of signals to other programs, okay, she's actually interested in being in the California area potentially, because otherwise they're gonna be like, this girl who's from Maryland and goes to school in DC, why would she want to come here? You know, so that's one way to kind of show places that you are interested in going to a particular state. And you also get to actively meet all the residents, meet the faculty, meet the program director, make those connections, and actually sell yourself as a good candidate for their residency program. That's another amazing way to connect. Cold emailing people also could be of benefit as well. Another thing you can do is whoever you do know, let's say you have a home ophthalmology department, talk to some of the faculty. Ask them, okay, do you know anybody at XYZ institution? Or do you know anybody who's in this area? And if they do, maybe they could facilitate connecting you guys. Yeah, I definitely had a good amount of Zoom calls and sessions with people at different institutions just because I had a mentor who connected me with so many different people. So I spent a lot of my M3 year in networking meetings and things like that. So that's one way to connect. Next question is, did signaling play a huge part of your success, or was it more arbitrary? So if you didn't know, signaling is a way to indicate your interest in a particular program, and the signals are submitted at the time you submit your application. And different specialties have different amounts of signals. So I know otolaryngology, for example, I think has like 25 or 30 signals, while ophthalmology has 7. So general rule of thumb, for the specialties that have a large number of signals, the advice almost is to not apply to that many more programs than there are numbers of signals. Because imagine a program receives your application and they know it's a specialty where you got 25 signals, and then they see you didn't signal them, and then they're like, so I'm not even in your top 25? That's crazy, I'm not going to interview her. However, for specialties like ophthalmology, which has a lower number of signals, you can still apply basically just as broadly as we always have. That signal carries more weight because it's like, okay, out of all the programs, out of the 80 programs she applied to, I'm in her top 7. So that's kind of the theory behind signals. Real quick, I also wanted to note that this is actually ophthalmology's first year using signals. So my class that applied just now are basically the guinea pigs regarding how signals work with ophthalmology. So I can only really speak from my experience because we don't have data on this yet. But I do think whether or not signals played a role was very program dependent. I didn't get an interview at every single program I signaled. Out of the 7 signals, I got 4 interviews from those programs. However, I got a lot of interviews from programs I did not signal, and even programs I wasn't even considering at first. For example, I did not signal this program, but once I interviewed there and learned more information, I was like, oh, this would be a pretty good fit. So it begs the question, okay, those 4 interviews I got, would I have gotten those interviews anyway if I had not signaled? And the answer really is I don't know. So based off what I've seen throughout the cycle, the only conclusion I could really draw, and even talking to program directors, is that signals might be considered, but from what I've seen, they're not only interviewing people from the signaled pool. So I'm kind of leaning towards signals did not have a huge effect. I think the major benefit in my head of signaling is that, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm broke, but to me the major benefit of signaling is you don't have to apply to as many programs because you might have more ability to just apply to the ones you're most interested in. However, in a specialty as competitive as ophthalmology, where the average number of programs to apply for is 80 something compared to most other specialties that's around 30, I don't really think it had too much effect. The major benefit of signals is being able to cut down on the amount of money you have to spend on the application process, and also to increase your chance of getting an interview. But I feel like the number of programs I had to apply to stayed the same, just because my class was the first class, so I didn't want to risk it. I wanted to apply broadly to maximize the number of interviews I get to maximize my chances of matching. So that didn't cut down, so I still paid thousands on the application itself, especially considering also the fact that it's a small number of signals that we have. Because it's only 7 signals, I can't just apply to 7 programs. That's dumb. It's dumb, it's unrealistic. So those two factors didn't really help improve the money aspect. And as far as the amount of interviews I got, I will say I received 22 interview invitations. 4 of those were from programs I signaled, 18 were from programs I did not signal at all. So in conclusion, I don't think it really helped too much, but that's just my opinion. Maybe if ophthalmology had a larger number of signals, then it would help with the cost aspect. But yeah, it's all a question mark, but that's just my experience. The next question is, how many hours daily did I personally study while in med school? So this probably varied year by year, but I kind of went hard low-key. In M1, I don't even remember, but I think I would try to spend 4 or 5 hours outside of like lectures studying on its own, but the lectures could be running for hours, and we also had to go to anatomy lab, histology lab, all those labs and stuff. In M2, my schedule was a bit more flexible. I aim to study at least 8 to 12 hours per day during M2. I kind of made a full-time job out of it, and I would go harder on exam weekends. During M3 was a little bit different because you're also working a full-time job while also simultaneously trying to study and simultaneously trying to wrap up your research projects. But generally, during M3, I would try to wake up earlier so that I can have an hour to study in the morning. I'm just not the type of person who can study too much throughout the day just because I could be a yapper and want to chat and socialize and things like that. I study better by myself, so I would wake up that hour before, and then usually I would, once I got home, I would study till about 11 or so, obviously depending on what rotation I'm on. Yeah, M3 was a lot of studying, especially because I was also trying to study for step 2 longitudinally. But on the days I was tired, I would just give myself a break. So it was very variable, but it was more of a as long as I can situation. And for M4, maybe I study for 30 minutes a day, just trying to learn things and improve. But I also study to prepare for like my tutoring and stuff like that. On those days where I had to study for such a long time, one thing that I have to think were my organizational skills. Being able to plan out my studying, making to-do lists, it's something that really helped me to just stay on track. I actually just got a new planner from Clever Fox, and I've been using this planning out my week while trying to invest in my personal growth. So let me show you guys this planner because 2025 is the year of personal growth, and it's not too late to start. So this is the planner. I have it in this rose gold color. It's an hourly weekly planner. You get to kind of plan your life out. They have questions regarding awareness and self-discovery, daily rituals. If you wanted to, you can make a vision board in here. You get to really write down your 1-year goals, 3-month goals, and you also get to like plan out your month with this big calendar. And I also get to write like my different goals for each month, different skills I want to learn, habits I want to adopt, things I want to avoid, and people and places I want to see. I'm trying to learn self-defense skills, improve my prayer life and going to the gym more often, avoiding useless spending, which I've done a great job on, and I wanted to hang out with my girls from Tochi, which I did, but I'm not really pressed to go anywhere as it is hella cold. Lots of things going on, and it really helps me to stay organized. So this is like the overall month calendar. This is the schedule for the week. So really being able to plan out everything you need to do and see it on paper so you don't double book yourself when times are busy. But at the end of the week, you get to do a weekly review. I actually wrote this recently. So it also makes you take time to reflect as well. Not only does this planner help you with organization, but it also helps with mindfulness. Clever Fox also sent me a habit tracker, which is really fun because I get to write write down things that I want to do daily, things I want to do weekly, things I want to do monthly. And every single day, it's almost like a game. If I accomplish something, I get to check it off. It just actually makes me remember to be consistent in doing these little things each day. So if you wanted to try out Clever Fox, you could use my code ORIONFA10 and click the link in description, which might be longer. So the next question, which a lot of people were asking, was why did I choose ophthalmology as my specialty? So I'm not going to go into too much detail because I do want to make a separate video outlining in more detail why I chose ophthalmology. But to summarize, firstly, because it's cool, the physiology and pathophysiology within the eye and just the way it interacts with so many systemic processes, different autoimmune conditions, diabetes, hypertension, STIs, infections. You know, there's so many things that you wouldn't even realize could affect the eye, but then they do. So it's really fun to learn about. It's just so fascinating. That's the first reason. Secondly, a lot of technological developments within ophthalmology. I feel like it's a specialty I would never get bored in. Thirdly, I really loved the balance between clinic and surgery. That's probably one of the main reasons, because I'm someone who, like I mentioned, I like to yap. I'm someone who enjoys building long-term relationships with people. However, I'm also somebody who likes doing things and working with my hands. And I think ophthalmology is one of the few specialties where you get to do both of those things. And the work that you get to do, the surgeries you get to do, are really life-changing for people. Even within a 15-minute surgery, cataract surgery, you could really change somebody's entire life trajectory. You can literally change the way they get to move on their day-to-day life, because vision is just such a large part of people's qualities of life. Being able to use your hands to help people in such an intimate way, in such an impactful way, I just feel like that's something that would be very fulfilling for me. Another thing is that ophthalmology is a great specialty for people who are interested in doing global work. Me, for example, I hope to do global work, specifically in Nigeria and other African countries, especially considering as much of a lack of access there is to eye care in Nigeria. Nigeria has like over 200 million people, and like in the entire nation they have 700 ophthalmologists. 700. It's just, that's not going to work. Like, so many people are having issues, and I just want to be able to help do what I can for those people who are struggling to access that, especially in the rural areas of Nigeria. And ophthalmology is good for that in particular, because you do have to figure out how to mediate the follow-up process. But if you can sort that out, you can go to Nigeria, or you can go to any country for a week and have positive impacts on hundreds of people. Like, even if you can't go for months at a time. Another thing is that the surgeries themselves are very intricate and very interesting compared to things like C-sections and a lot of those surgeries that general surgeons do. I just feel like working on a smaller scale and being able to use these different tools to do things on such a small level, it's just very beautiful. It's almost mesmerizing to watch, and I was just a bit more attracted to those kinds of procedures. And also the lifestyle. I'm not gonna lie, lifestyle did play a big role in the specialty I chose from the jump. Residency is gonna be hard no matter where you go, but thinking about the type of life I want to live as an attending and the type of flexibility that I want to have as far as being able to spend time with my family and raise my children, I wanted to do something that has hours that are more on the regular side, which ophthalmology is one of. If you've heard the acronym ROAD specialties, that's radiology, ophthalmology, anesthesiology, and dermatology. The acronym is a little bit outdated, but I would say for ophthalmology it still holds true. So yeah, lifestyle was definitely an important factor. Those are a few of the reasons I chose ophthalmology, but I can give my reasons in more detail in another video. But I do honestly think it is the best specialty in medicine. So if you haven't heard of it, I would definitely look into it. The next question is, how am I feeling? I feel great. The post-match life actually is not as chill as I thought it would be, because I'm still doing rotations like inpatient medicine, but this is my last clinical rotation, thankfully. But it's very exciting. I feel like the energy would be like higher once I have my long white coat ceremony and everybody else who's doing the NRMP match has their match day. It's been fun actually, because just me and the other ophthalmology people and the urology people and the military, we're the only ones who've matched so far. So every time somebody sees me, they know who I am, they know where I matched. Even people I hadn't met before, they're like, oh my gosh, I saw your post, congrats. So it's really been good energy, good vibes. I am a little tired though from being on my rotation and also tutoring, but yeah, honestly I can't complain. I'm also excited to move and to start making money. I've been broke for too long, but I also am a little bit nervous for a multitude of reasons. Number one being residency is such a learning curve, and being in a new environment, just how I'm going to adjust. But one thing about me, I'll figure it out. Like, I'm actually pretty confident that whatever challenge comes my way, I will be able to handle. I just have a positive mindset like that. Maybe I'm being naive, but everything is figure outable. The next couple questions are kind of similar to my answer for why ophthalmology. At what point in your journey did you know ophthalmology was the specialty you wanted to pursue? As far as timeline, starting med school, I had like no clue what ophthalmology was, never heard of it. I actually found out about it from a YouTube video. If you know Dr. Kevin Jabal, Med School Insiders, I watched a video called So You Want to Be an Ophthalmologist. And the reason I watched that video was because the AAMC has quizzes, and like based off your personality and things that you want to do throughout your career, it gives you ideas of specialties that might be a good fit. And ophthalmology came up number one. And I was like, what the heck is ophthalmology? So I watched that video from Med School Insiders. So it wasn't until like the beginning of my M1 year that I'd even heard of ophthalmology. As I continued to explore it and getting involved in the ophthalmology interest group and shadowing and going to conferences, I was like, okay, I like ophthalmology, but I don't want to rule out other things. But as I went through my M3 year, there were a couple other specialties I considered. For example, I considered otolaryngology at one point, and I considered OB-GYN at another point. There was even a point I was really considering general surgery, but I just noted that like as I went through my different rotations, there was nothing that beat ophthalmology in my head. Ophthalmology, it just still felt like the best. I weighed other things, but ophthalmology couldn't be beat. To summarize, it started off as hearing about it as an M1, learning more about it throughout M1, M2, M3, and as an M3, it was process of elimination and just realizing that it was the best route. So I guess there wasn't really a ding aha moment. The next question is, what makes surgery on an eye exciting compared to other body parts / organs? And I think I kind of answered this a little bit. The main thing is the intricacy of it. Unlike most specialties, with microsurgery, you actually do the surgery under a microscope. And like when I look at the little tools that we use and then seeing how like big it looks underneath the microscope and how you get to do things in such a precise manner, I'm someone who values precision, and really trying to get things exactly how they're supposed to be is something that excites me. So that's one thing. And another thing is kind of just how the physiology ties into the different surgeries and the way that we try and make corrections to the eye in order to resolve whatever ailments exist. One example would be like the different glaucoma surgeries that we have. If you don't know, glaucoma is usually due to elevated pressures in the eye, which can result in damage to the optic nerve. That's like the most common type of glaucoma. There's so many. You can have like normal tension glaucoma, closed angle glaucoma. Like there are a lot of different ways to get glaucoma outside of that broad stroke explanation. You can also get uveitis, which is like inflammation within the eye, usually secondary to different autoimmune conditions, or you can have it on its own. That inflammation itself could block off the drainage of the fluid in the eye and lead to glaucoma. And there's so many different ways to get it. And it's interesting seeing how different stages of glaucoma or different pathophysiologies lead to you approaching the surgeries in different ways, and there are just so many different ways to do things. Glaucoma surgeries include trabeculectomies, MIGS procedures, so the minimally invasive glaucoma surgeries. You can also implant valves to help pump that fluid out, for lack of a better term. I'm trying to say things in very simple terms. The eye just kind of surprises me every day because you learn that there's so many different things that can go wrong with it, and there's so many different techniques and different ways to help ameliorate those. So just learning about it in general is exciting, and also that microsurgery aspect to it. So that's all for the questions on Instagram. I wanted to also answer the questions that were on YouTube. Okay, so one person asked multiple questions. First one is, how did I get all the research for Match without a research year? I'm very glad you asked this question because one of my major fiascos of M3 was deciding whether or not to take a research year, and I ended up deciding not to. So my first experiences in ophthalmology research was when I did a summer program. So a lot of people between the M1 and M2, that summer in between, a lot of people do different research programs at different institutions. I had done some research at Johns Hopkins. So I was able to do a really interesting project based off of that. One where I got to present at one of the national conferences as the first author. That was probably my favorite project that I've worked on. So being able to work with a research mentor for that summer, but also having the opportunities to shadow and learn more about ophthalmology and see if I like it was a very meaningful experience. It also taught me a lot of what I know now about how to conduct research. So that was one research experience I had. And most of my other research experiences were actually at Howard. The main thing you can do to get projects is to reach out to the attendings, reach out to the residents, ask around and see which ones are more into research, first of all, because there's some attendings who are like more so into research while others are more clinical based. So finding those attendings to work with. And also, oftentimes, for certain years of residency, the program requires ophthalmology residents to complete a project. At Howard, the PGY2s have to complete a project. So now I know which residents are most likely to need help with research, and being able to reach out to those residents, asking if they need help with something. So a lot of it was just asking around and seeing what I can hop on and seeing what I could help with. So that helped me to get projects as well. The next question is, what grades/scores did I have? Howard has it for M1 and M2. You can get fail, pass, honors. And to honor, you would need about an 85% overall grade. And to pass, you would need a 70. However, for M3, we had the system of fail, pass, high pass, honor. And the difference between like pass, high pass, honors, in order to honor, you would need to honor both your shelf exam as well as your clinical grades. And the score required to honor the shelf exam depended on what exam it was, which specialty exam it was. In order to high pass, your overall grade needed to be above an 85, but high pass is for people who didn't quite honor the shelf exam, but their overall grade, including their shelf exam score, was above 85. So for example, if you got a 93 on your clinical grade, but you got an 83 on your shelf exam, and let's say the honoring threshold for the shelf exam was 85, you would probably get a high pass because they would average out to above 85. However, if you got a 85 on your clinical grade and a 70 on your shelf exam, chances are when you run the grades, it's not going to average to 85, so you would get a satisfactory rather than a high pass. But as far as my clerkships, I honored all of them, honoring both the clinical grade and the shelf exam. As far as scores, I passed step 1 on the first try, and I got a 255 on step 2. Oh, I forgot M2. So M1, I had a mix of satisfactories and honors. M2, I honored all except one course, which I got satisfactory. But I honored most of M2, honored all of M3, and M4 grades don't matter. I'm just trying to pass now. And the last question is, what plan would I give an MS1 to successfully match into ophthalmology? That's a good question. Number one thing, get a mentor, get a mentor, get a mentor. In fact, get multiple mentors. Ophthalmology is a very niche specialty. It's a small specialty. There are so many things about the process of applying to ophthalmology that are a little bit different from the process of applying to other specialties. And also, you don't get much exposure to ophthalmology through your medical school curriculum. You might get like 2 days worth of lectures on it, but it's not really sufficient to know that you want to do the specialty early on. So by getting a mentor, mentors who are med students interested in ophthalmology at higher grade levels than you, residents as well as attendings. Having mentors at all of these levels helps you to get different perspectives. And for the attendings, you get to actually shadow them and see the vibes of ophthalmology and see if it's even for you earlier rather than later. Because it does take a lot of work to build an application for a competitive specialty, so it's good to expose yourself to it early on. Join the interest group, go to the community service events, go to whatever conferences or whatever events the department's having. Make yourself known, and also get involved in research projects. Just start learning more and more about the specialty to see if it is even for you. The other important aspect of mentorship is being able to kind of just have guidance as far as how to get into such a competitive specialty that outside of the people within it, nobody really knows anything about. So yeah, find your ways to integrate yourself into the ophthalmology world at your school and even amongst the people in your local community. And that's the first step, really. Aside from that, make sure your grades are good, make sure your steps are good, get as much research as you can, and just try and soak it in overall. So those are all the questions. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this interesting, I'm sure you'll love watching my match day video. So give that a click. If you have any outstanding questions, feel free to comment them down below. Give this video a like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. Love y'all. Adios.